Welcome to Smells Like Potential, the rewatch podcast you didn't know you needed. Despite seeing a Renaissance painting portraying masculine melancholy, AFC Richmond is going up. Keeley gets an offer to run her own PR firm and builds up the courage to tell Rebecca. Ted invites the public to talk about mental health and athletics, and Nate tries to invert the pyramid of success.
I tell you, this episode really brought together a lot of what we spoke about in the session that we used to present to educators. It was our season 2 version of what we really focused on social emotional work, whether it be in education or elsewhere. And this particular season finale brought us so many lessons.
It really did. I want to open with book club.
Okay. All right. Hey, it's your podcast.
We saw Beard reading a heavily annotated copy, so many sticky notes, of Inverting the Pyramid, The History of Soccer Tactics by Jonathan Wilson. I feel like Beard has read this book multiple times.
Yes, and it's clear. It seems like it really is the best history of soccer tactics. It doesn't get into the detail of every single tactic, but it talks about the ebb and flow of how teams approach the beautiful game. Part of those steps is deploying a false nine. False nine is a gateway to total football, an entirely different philosophy that we'll talk more about with season 3. But because the number 9 is the jersey that's worn by the attacking striker. It's usually the center forward, what we would refer to in US as center forward. And they are the ones that's your best shooter, your striker. They're usually the fastest player. In this case, it's Jamie. He wears the number 9. You call it a false 9 because you then hide him a little bit in the midfield. The opposing team thinks, oh, they're only putting 2 strikers up. They're focusing on defense.
Right. In this episode, we saw Nate staring at the pyramid of success on the wall in Ted and Beard's office. Can you share a little bit about what those blocks on the pyramids look like?
Yeah. So if you go to coachwooden.com, because of course this is John Wooden, the famous UCLA coach, it's a pyramid and it's made up of blocks, and the blocks have a wider base like a pyramid and then have a single block at the top. That base has things like loyalty, and that's the core central block in the middle of the pyramid. Collaboration as another one of those base level ones. Friendship is in there. These are all things that Ted focuses on. He's starting at the base to build a foundation. At the very top of the pyramid is competitive greatness. That's where you're winning games because of all the hard work you've done lower on the pyramid. Speaking of loyalty, at the core of that pyramid, we have to look at the opposite of that, and that false word that we just talked about, false 9. That's where we see Rupert and others behaving. When we talked about the funeral episode that Rupert was gifting the shares of Richmond to Rebecca as a funeral present, even then she was hesitant to accept it on its face. But now we find out why. Because there is a rule that you can't own the shares in more than one competitive team. So he's donating Richmond's shares to Rebecca only so he could buy, drum roll please, West Ham. So he is going to own a new team outright and get himself back into a position. That was potentially what he whispered to Nate, but it was all done so that he could move forward. It wasn't done out of kindness.
No. And then we see Mr. Akufu Edwin sending flowers. Rebecca thought it might be about her father's passing. And no, it's to congratulate her on losing Sam to Casablanca. He gave him that number 10 jersey. And when Sam said no, I was scared.
Yeah, he clearly reacted badly. He behaved like a child. He was threatening to never allow Sam to get onto the Nigerian national team.
And to poop in every room in his childhood home?
Yeah, he way overboard.
This is not how adults react.
I feel like Sam realizes in this moment he dodged a bullet. Because what happens when the team loses? What happens when something else doesn't go Edwin's way?
He doesn't get a hat trick.
Yeah, at every game. Yeah. So what are the expectations that Edwin has for Sam as the leader of the team that he may not achieve? He made the right choice.
I'm grateful that we get another season with Sam.
Yay. This all leads to, I think, the core of this episode, where we finally see Nate and Ted's relationship come to a head. At halftime, they're losing, and they're trying to deploy Nate's false 9, and it's just not working. The players aren't quite getting it. They aren't connecting. And so Ted takes it to the team and says, do you think we should continue this? Is the tactic sound, as Jan says, or should we abandon it and go to something else? And he refers to it as Nate's false nine. He's giving him credit. Now Nate reverses himself and says, oh, I see. You aren't giving me credit because you think it's not going to work, and then you can blame me. He blows up with Ted at halftime. Ted does the right thing. He comes and says, is there something bothering you? You want to talk? Clearly, you're mad at me. And it's a real core conversation between the two. Nate presents his case. He said, you made me feel like the most important person in the world, and then you abandoned me. Now, abandoned, we switch to Ted's face for that reaction. His eyebrows move up, and it clearly affects him, the word abandoned.
There were some really hurtful statements that Nate said to Ted. He mentions, you should be with your son, and you abandoned me. Those were just deliberate stabs right to Ted's heart. It was difficult, I'm sure, for Ted to hear these things being said. But his reaction, I would love to be able to model if I'm ever faced with a difficult conversation like this.
Yes, absolutely. His response is not defensive. He says, what have I got to learn here? That is the peak ability of being curious, not judgmental, to be attacked so harshly as he was, and in some cases completely without merit. At some point, Nate says, the picture I gave you, you don't even have it in your office. We know where it is.
We know it is in his bedroom next to Henry, a place of honor, a place where family goes. And Ted didn't interrupt Nate's tirade to say, you're wrong. He let Nate go. He let Nate say what he needed to say and agreed with everything.
Yeah, he validates Nate's feelings. He's absolutely making sure that Nate feels seen and heard in that moment.
Right? I feel like I learned from this moment as an educator and how I engage with students. When a student would come to me very upset about a grade or frustrated about what's happening in their life, me remembering, okay, what do I need to learn here? Be curious about where that student is experiencing frustration instead of trying to defend myself. This was a really helpful scene, as hard as it was to watch.
Yeah.
I felt like it did help me grow as a human and as an educator when working with students.
And as a leader, there's a true leadership lesson here in that you want to hear from the people that you lead to make sure that you're on the same page, to make sure that you're not inadvertently making them feel bad or left out or not a part of the team. Ted really models that. So this for me has been a lesson, and it's something I've strived to accomplish, because I think I fail far too often where I take the bait and I correct them or I defend myself when I feel I'm attacked. And Ted really steps above that, which is fantastic.
Right. I feel like Nate missed the point of that pyramid of success. I'm sure this is why they titled this episode Inverting the Pyramid of Success. Nate is looking at the top block of the pyramid, and that's competitive greatness. And he's trying to force relationships and leadership through competitive greatness. He's not looking at the foundation of loyalty and friendship. The second row, this was also really interesting. If you look at the pyramid of success, the second row has poise and confidence, which Nate is severely lacking. But if he's inverted it and he's trying to start with competitive greatness and then look at poise and confidence, this is where the spitting comes in.
Yeah, it's his attempt to develop that confidence that he sees in Rebecca, that he sees in Ted. Even in Beard, he sees those examples of confidence.
Right? So he's the antithesis of Ted and John Wooden's philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that this baseline of the pyramid is those relationships that Ted has developed with characters and Beard has developed with characters. Even Roy now is starting to develop with other characters. He's really leaning into his role as assistant coach. And it's underlying the importance of the Diamond Dogs. We almost get Roy joining
the
Diamond Dogs. So close. He just asks to be in the room where it happens and participate, but not necessarily join. So they allow that. He shares that his feelings were hurt when none of the photos from the photo shoot with him in it were used. They talk about it for a bit and go back and forth around, but he does say she looked great and I really loved the pictures they chose of her. So he's acknowledging that on some level he's okay with it. And so then they dismount. That's it. That's the end of the Diamond Dog. Because wait, do you mean sometimes you guys don't solve anything and it's just talking and barking? Ted says, yeah. He puts his jacket on and goes out to the game.
That's cool. No, but his one feeling was hurt, though.
Yeah. He has one feeling. Yeah, I apologize, listeners. I said feelings when Roy only admitted to having one.
That was a nice moment where Ted and Beard are like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we see that baseline of the pyramid in Rebecca and Keeley's relationship. At one point, Keeley says, "Thank you for turning this panda into a lion." And I love that it is a callback to that very first episode, Panda and Lion.
This is also something we talked about in our session. Again, this is so seminal to the talk that we used to give. We also see Beard mentioning Ted's mustache might pop off. He's worried. That's why he wants him to talk to Nate, because he's like, you got to talk to him. I'm worried your mustache is going to pop off, which sounds like just a funny throwaway line until our next episode. We're going to be reviewing the holiday animated special that they released, in which Ted's mustache has popped off. It's missing.
It's gone missing.
And that's the whole plot. I feel like this was a nugget for us to find when they released that animated Rankin Bass Christmas special. So on to movies, TV, and music references. The opening sequence where they walk down the streets of Richmond and Ted is presented with all the different headlines. Ted Dead in the Head is one of them. And we hear the Rolling Stones song Yesterday's Papers.
Because who wants those?
Yeah. We also see, just for a fun little side note, there is a special episode that they put out called This Day in Richmond History. And it was a St. Patrick's Day episode where they unwisely chose to outfit the team with green kits, all green. I think they forgot that they play on green grass. It was the lowest successful pass ratio in the team's history because they couldn't see each other. It features Rebecca reflecting on it and how upset Rupert was that day. If you want to go find it, it is on the Instagram accounts out there. It's This Day in Richmond History, St. Patrick's Day.
One of my favorite memories about the St. Patrick's Day clip is it was released the same day that we were giving a presentation. So we got to awe an entire room full of
Ted Lasso fans.
200 people. How many were in that room?
They were jam-packed, standing room only.
Standing room only, and it was nearly everybody's first time seeing it. So I love that short clip on Instagram.
That was a fun thing we were able to pull off. I liked that. We also had a reference to A Few Good Men. We also had a reference to Melrose Place when Ted accidentally substituted salt for sugar when making Rebecca's biscuits for that day, because he was understandably upset after hearing the news in the reporting and all of the headlines. And they talk about Heather Locklear and the role that she played in that show as a, what can we say, salty bitch?
Well, sneaky salty bitch.
There, yes, that's true. But I think it flips over because at some point Rebecca says, hold on, this is actually interesting, and she keeps eating it. Right? Later you hear her say, oh, Heather. So I think she kind of likes this particular batch.
I think if you're just expecting sweet, that's the problem. But give it a chance. And it's really good.
Yeah. We also hear one of my favorite songs, ELO, Electric Light Orchestra's Don't Bring Me Down, as the boys are getting ready to go on the pitch. They're getting pumped up for the game. I love ELO. My podcast co-host, it's not your favorite.
Not my favorite, and we are not going to talk about Xanadu.
No, but because it brings together the greatest dancer in history, Gene Kelly.
I'll give you that. I just roller skating.
Awesome band that does the soundtrack.
No.
Greek mythology.
No.
Olivia Newton-John. I mean, come on. It's a fantastic movie.
No ELO for me.
Okay, so just for the record, listeners, we don't agree on all things pop culture. We also had some wit and wisdom. We had Ted quote who he gives the name John Obi-Wan Gandalf. Of course, we know it's John Wooden because he does preface it by saying UCLA basketball coach,
right?
John Obi-Wan Gandalf. And he says, it's our choices, gentlemen, that show who we truly are, far more than our abilities. Which is a great quote until you look it up.
Who actually has this quote?
That's Dumbledore from Harry Potter. And it wasn't gentleman, it was Harry. It is our choices, Harry. And so I think it's hilarious that he's quoting one of his favorite heroes, John Wooden, but not really.
Not really.
Quoting Dumbledore. I think all of them might agree with that particular sentiment. John Wooden, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Gandalf. And in a case, it is kind of a fun little
misrepresentation,
misattribution from Ted Lasso.
And then Higgins has some incredible wit and wisdom. Keeley needs support. She just learned that the VC wants to back her for her own PR firm. She goes to Higgins, and he's got Macy Greyhound and Tina Feyhound in his hands. Oh, so cute. Higgins says, "Well, I'm just happy to be on the list,"
Yes.
which made me giggle. But at the end of their exchange, Higgins says, "A good mentor hopes you will move on. A great mentor knows you will."
Just fantastic.
Fantastic. Right now, we're in the middle of summer, and there is a lot of movement in
Yes.
education, and we see evidence of good mentors and great mentors as people move on in their roles.
Yeah. We also see Ted, instead of talking about the game, he turns the news story about his panic attack around by saying he'd rather use this press conference to focus on his overall concern with the way we deal with and discuss mental health in athletics, which is a huge thing to do in a press conference, and to draw the attention away from himself and instead, how do we talk about this? And I think it really drew from some of the recent athletes that stepped forward on this subject. Brave athletes stepped forward.
Mhm.
Gabby Douglas, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps. They've all spoken out in recent years. Some of them predated this episode of Ted Lasso. Some have come after. I still give credit to the writers of Ted Lasso that they called it out and they used their platform as a TV show to say we should talk about this
Right.
through this fictional character.
Having this major platform, Ted Lasso, this show that is huge at this point in season 2, openly talking about mental health and trying to engage the public, not only the Ted Lasso-verse public, but our public, on how we treat athletes, was incredible. I think that conversation still needs to be had. It's an issue in education as well. We talk about student mental health. Our students need help, and we try to provide resources to them. But when it comes to the adults in education, remember your why. And self-care is important, but we don't allow time for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about that in our session. We use the example on a plane that you need to put your own mask on first before you help others. You got to
Right.
make sure you're there and that you're doing well so that you can take care of the students in your care. It's a powerful message, and they used a season finale to
Mhm.
draw attention to it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you tomorrow for our reaction to the animated Christmas special that Beard hinted at in today's episode, The Missing Mustache. And we've got 2 special guests joining us. And for our outro quote, there's no greater education than travel.